morning and welcome to The Point. It is Friday, April 22nd, 2022. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN, Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the GBN Production YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channels 7, 11, and 20. Good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9. Thank you very much for tuning into To The Point this morning. Joining me virtually for this morning's program is the Public Relations Officer of the National Disaster Management Agency, Oslyn Crosby, and we'll be talking all things natural disasters. We'll be talking about the things that have been done, as well as what preparations have been put in place as we get ready for another hurricane season in just about 2 months, actually. So let's welcome to the program Miss Crosby. Good morning, Miss Crosby, and thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning.
Good morning, Blossom, and it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I think we can safely say it is a resumption of our monthly experience.
Yes, ma'am.
Through the disaster management process. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to have you. So as I alluded to, we'll be talking this morning about a lot of things that the agency has been doing, some known and I guess some unknown as well. Since the end of the hurricane season, November 30th, 2021, what has the agency been up to during that time, as well as preparing for the next hurricane season, which starts in June?
So Blossom, a lot has been happening, and I know it's often the myth that most of the thing that it only happens when we are getting close to the season. But you know that you cannot prepare for the season when the season starts. All the work has to happen before the season begins. And we don't only prepare for hurricanes. We know that all the hazards that can affect us, that we do prepare for them. We had, if I'm to start with what was most immediate, we had our annual tsunami exercise last month. Happens every year in the month of March, the second Thursday in that month. And we had a number of people participating, a number of businesses participating. This year it was held in the parish of St. John. We did it last year also in Victoria and St. John, but this year we chose to do it only in St. John when we exercise. So it's our annual tsunami exercise, where we have an opportunity to, one, raise awareness of the hazard, because we know that it is not a hazard that we are very familiar with, because we have never experienced it. But as I said a while ago, you don't prepare for the hazard when it comes. You cannot prepare then. You have to respond then, so we prepare before. And that exercise, it's one that's geared around raising awareness, one, and also preparing people to know what they should do if it were to affect us. And it's oftentimes interesting when you speak about tsunami. Some would say, but why is it that we're talking about it? It's as if we're trying to call it. No, we're not. It is important that we do, because we know that you need to be ready. And when we hear the information from our experts, our scientists, and so as it relates to disaster management and that hazard, it sometimes have us, I mean, we would be concerned, as we should be concerned, because I know for the information that for the people who follow these natural hazards, for example, you would hear from the experts that the region is due for a huge tsunami. According to the cycle, right? According to our experts, which is our Met Office is our focal point for tsunamis. And as we were preparing for the exercise and we were conversing, it came up. The region is due for a huge tsunami. The last tsunamis happened, according to the cycle, every 100 years. And Blossom, we have passed the time. So it means, therefore, that it can happen at any time. We have been noticing a lot of earthquakes, a lot of movements in the earth. That is one of the triggers for tsunami. We speak about it from time to time, that it can be caused by an earthquake, and this would be a big one. At least we see at least a 7.0 on the Richter scale and above. And if its depth is shallow, then we know what can happen. It can create that movement that can pat the water and put us in and be of concern to us. And remember, we are a very small island. There is no way that we will be affected by tsunami, and the western side will be affected and not the east. We are too small. So when I say what have we been doing, we have been preparing for all the hazards, so all of them. So and I did choose to start with tsunami because I know it was our most recent exercise in heightening awareness. And in addition to that, to our exercise that was done last month, we also continue our work in that of the tsunami recognition program. What do we speak to when we speak to that? It is our a couple of years ago in 2017-18, we spoke about St. Patrick's being recognized as tsunami ready. If you go through the parish, you'd see a number of tsunami signs telling you a hazard zone, also giving you information that if you feel, hear, or see, you run to higher ground. You have the maps that shows you where will be inundated with water if there is a tsunami affecting the parish. If you go to Caracal and PT Martinique, you will also see some of these signs. Directional signs, you see the hazard zone sign, you will see muster point signs. So it tells you where you should go. It points you in the direction, so it forms part of that awareness program. We are now working towards having St. George, the town, the capital, now recognized tsunami ready. And this one is of significance, huge significance for us, because this is where we do, this is our economic hub. This is where everything happens. This is the brain of the country. This is where it resides. And it therefore means that this is where our tourists comes. This is where our business people come to conduct business. This is where our policymakers would sit. Blossom, we are all in it. The only good thing is you are up on the hill, so which means that is good for you, for the town, right in the town. We might have people walking on an ordinary day. We get a huge tremor. People need to know where they should go. We have our financial institutions, and remember, we are primarily based on the coast. Our capitals, or all our towns actually, are positioned on the coastline. So if that's the case, what happens? All our towns are there. Almost all our police stations are positioned well within the hazard zones. Our hospital is dead in the hazard zone. It is important that we have the conversation. It is important that we plan. And as I always say to people, when we speak of tsunamis and we speak of the hazard that the threat that hazard brings to us, it is not to create fear. It is rather to sensitize people so that we can better be prepared when the hazard do affect us. And that is what I'm sharing this morning. Not a case of creating fear, but one where we make people more aware as to what you should do. Where can you go? It is very important. As I always say, I want us to get to the place where when we walk through St. George's, we leave our homes, we may be living in a safe zone from tsunamis, but we come into the town and we recognize that we're well within the hazard zone. So we need to stand up, position yourself. So I'm standing in front of the Blue Street Mall, and I just say, if there is a tsunami, where should I go? We don't stop to take a picture of the wave. No, we should be running up Market Hill. We should be running up Market Hill. It is the highest point in the town. And these are the things that we want people to understand when we share this information, that it is there for your safety. And we want you to listen, practice it, not just listen, practice it and speak to your little ones about it.
Like you mentioned, the tsunami exercise was the most recent. What sort of information does the agency gather from these simulation exercises in terms of putting measures in place, changes or adjustments that need to be made, what may be lacking, what needs to be done? What information do you gather from the simulation? And what happens to the information?
Right. So what we do at these exercises, we would have evaluators. So we assess, we would invite, we have volunteers rather, that we have trained to be able to assess, to conduct an assessment of these exercises. So every participating place, we will send an evaluator there so that you can see one, you have to do it against the internal plan. That's providing they do have one. If you don't have one, though, we can use the exercise as giving you first-hand information to now guide your process to create a plan. So that is what we do. We would send the evaluators there. Critical in tsunami exercises that of time, because you don't have much time between the catalyst, which can be an earthquake, and the time that the waves do show up to you getting to safety. So if you don't have a plan, it is also important that people know how they should leave, where they should go, and what you should do when you get to the muster point or your safe point. So what we have is somebody there that is checking all of these things, seeing so for example, when the alert came, right? So the alert came from Met, checking that time, when it came, what people did, where they went to, how they moved out. Because while you might be trying to get to safety, getting to safety can create another hazard. In that of stampede, whenever people are flustered, let's say it's a real life situation, if we cannot orderly move ourselves out of the hazard zone, then we can create another problem. So it means, therefore, that instead of everybody trying to get to the area, others might be trying to help others, and that can put you in danger, right? So when we get that information, at the end, we compile a huge report. Right now, we have that report in our possession. We have seen some of the shortcomings, right? It will detail those things. The shortcomings, who moved where, what's the time they moved. It might not have been orderly. Maybe from what they see, it appears as though there is no plan. So we can then write. After that, we will follow up with the point people from the different entities. So, for example, in St. John, we had the police involved in the exercise. We had some of our financial institutions in the parish was also involved. We had our schools involved. We had even some of our health centers involved. And in Guelph, all these places that I'm calling there are places well within the hazard, right? You might think that the RC school rather in Guelph is not in any danger because they are not close to the sea, right? That is not the case. Right behind the school is the river. While tsunamis it's the sea that's bringing in the water. Remember, rivers are access points for water to enter inland. It means that the school is well within the hazard zone because it is right behind the river. When you have a rushing waters rushing in due to a tsunami, that river is going to act like a road, and a vehicle traveling at over 100 miles per hour, it will be coming in. And it means that it's going to flood the schoolyard, which puts our children in danger. What should they do and where should they go? You go up to Central because we cannot have them crossing the river, or else what will happen? The same water that's coming up, it is going to wash them away. And these are some of the pointers. These are some of the things that we look for. And it is also some of the things that we would share when it comes to sharing tips on tsunamis, that you don't run across the waves. So let's use another place, for example. Nawasa is lower Depredin, right? Lower Depredin Street. Where would be Nawasa's muster point, and how do they get there? The muster point that we use for these areas are right behind St. Louis modern secondary schools. Very, very high. You would not even think that it's that high until you go there. It is very high. How do you get there? Can they run now from where the office is just lower down Depredin to run up the main street? No, you will not have that time. The wave is coming to you, so you never run across. You try to use the shortest route away from the wave so that you get to the highest point, right? And these are the information blossom that we would use to share with our participating offices, businesses, agencies after the exercise. So we are now in the process of getting ready to convene that meeting where we'll be sending those communications and having discussions with these business spaces so that we can share with you now what we saw, what are some of our observations, and now help you better tailor or review your plan so that it can better respond to the hazard when and or if it does occur.
Preparations for hurricanes is another important part of everybody, especially following the experience of Hurricane Ivan in 2004. I think that's when Grenadians really started to take these things more seriously. What has been put in place so far, or what preparations have been done so far as we get ready for the next hurricane season, which starts in 2 months' time?
Which starts in a month and 2 weeks' time.
To be exact.
Just about that, right? Yes. You want to say 2 months? We would not even say 2 months because it would make us feel as though we have time to prepare. A lot of time, rather.
Fair enough.
And lots of not even 2 weeks, 1 month and 1 week.
Tell me about it.
Because it's the 22nd. So it means that the year is quickly flying by. April is almost through and we are about to enter into May. It means, therefore, that we are about to go into a charged season. With that said, what have we done? We have been conducting a thorough review of the hurricane plans, or hurricane plan and our other natural disaster plans. Because I think one of the things that COVID has taught us, right, is that we might have control, or rather try to put restrictions on people's movement when we have something like a pandemic. The hurricane season does not mean that it will be going on hold because we have one hazard to deal with. So we've had a very charged environment to operate in for the past 2 years. Multi-hazardous simply by what has happened. So the pandemic was like a constant, and it is still there. And I don't want us to let us not think that it is not there. It is still there. And then we have the hurricane season that you cannot stop. Nature at its best. And on top of it, we still have the hazards that can just happen at any point. The accidents, the fire, the same tsunami, the volcanoes, all of it can still happen, right? With that said, we have been conducting a thorough review of the hurricane plan because I know you might have heard Senator Gary speaking about it on several occasions in Parliament, or in the Senate rather, on taking legislation to Parliament to enact that disaster management legislation, yeah? So that we do know we're actually going to Parliament where you actually have teeth. We actually have something, a policy document that will be able to guide, give us even more to do, and also to ensure that our safety becomes paramount. That we have also been doing. So, review of the plan. The legislation is now in a draft stage. It should be going to Parliament. This year, it should be going to Parliament so that it can be sanctioned by our policymakers. With that, Blossom, it therefore means that we will be in a better position to say, if something had to happen, that we can move, and we're moving so according as we should be. Let us go back to the Emergency Powers Act, right? That we were using during the COVID period. When that legislation goes into Parliament, it gives us, we often hear, I remember all during COVID, where is NaDMA? NaDMA is always there, because remember, NaDMA is a coordinating unit. It is what we do. NaDMA's construct involves the representative from all public and private sectors that we consider to be essential in the recovery of our country after a hazard will affect us. So we have been working. That has been in tune. With that said, we have also been conducting our shelter inspection. We know that is always one that people we have to do each year, because we must update the list, ensure that the buildings that were certified last year as emergency shelters, and they are not hurricane shelters, but emergency shelters, remain intact structurally, and that they can withstand, if we are to be affected by a Category 5, whatever category, that it can withstand it, and people will be safe when we house them there. And remember, we do separate the shelters. We have primary shelters and we have the secondary shelters. So that process is ongoing. And I must add here that we lost a very, very crucial member of that shelter committee this year when he suddenly passed. And we at NaDMA, we will continue to be very grateful for that contribution that he has made. That was Mr. Toussaint. He suddenly passed, actually, while the process was ongoing. He fell ill and he did pass. And we continue to extend condolences to his family. But his contribution to NaDMA in playing a very, very critical anchoring role on that committee, we treasure, and we will continue to salute him for that resounding contribution that he gave. By guiding the team each year in ensuring that Blossom is something going to happen, God forbid, and we need to leave our homes, that there is somewhere that that is considered safe enough for us to be able to go to in times of these hazards affecting us. So to Mr. Toussaint's family, again, we do say thank you, and we do empathize and extend condolences to his family. So the shelter inspection has been ongoing. In addition to that, Blossom, we are now getting ready to increase and bolster our PR, so our public awareness. It's important that we know that every year people would hear it, clean your gutters, clean your drains, and some people never truly understand why until the rain starts falling and recognize that all the leaves in the gutters, in your guttering, nor the water coming inside the house. So we continue to share. While they may seem simple, we recognize that it is important and continue to be important. And we will be working along with our partners, our stakeholders, our key stakeholders who form part of the committees, our National Emergency Advisory Committees, which is the advisory body that whenever a hazard is coming or approaching us, about to impact us, would convene a meeting and recommendations will be made to Cabinet, who would then sanction these recommendations. And then, of course, the Secretariat would get into work. In addition to that, we are adding new life to our district committees because Blossom, they play a critical role in what we do. We cannot do it. The Secretariat, it's just about between 15 and 20 people. 15 and 20 people cannot mount a national response to a hazard, like a hurricane, when the entire country would be affected. It means that our committees in the communities will be our first responders. Who are that committees? Our police, our nurses, and our district, our volunteers within the communities that gives human service in that time. And I want you to note here, our volunteers. Disaster management works. We cannot work without volunteers because Blossom, if you have to pay everyone to be able to respond to times of need here on island, I don't think we could foot that bill. I don't think we'll be able to foot that bill. So we are always very grateful to the people who give all their time and service to country. I call it patriotic sacrifice. But at the end of the day, we know that when we do, others are helped. Others can smile. We help put a roof over someone's head. We help give someone food. We help give someone one bottle of water when they may not have not one clean cup of water to drink. And I think that, to me, is a humanitarian service that nobody can pay you for, but it is more gratifying by simply seeing that you have done something good for someone. So yes, we continue our work in preparation for the season. But Blossom, in addition to that, I know that the Met Office, who is also one of our very key partners in preparation for the season, they have started last year in doing the impact forecasting, and then we would also be engaging our media partners soon, as it is important that our dissemination arms understand what it is that we're doing, how it is that we're doing, and how you can assist in ensuring that the information is shared. Because sometimes something is happening. It may not be as bad, but how it is shared, who shares it? When you add so much to it, it creates more panic than anything else. And when it's really coming, it's like calling wolf when wolf is not there. And when the wolf really come, then we know people will not respond as they should, because it's like, okay, so last time they said so. But in addition to that, it is also helping people to understand how dynamic this field is, especially that of forecasting. That yes, sometimes you may hear that the rain is going to come. It did not come, but I think we should be grateful for the better condition rather than bad one. But it is always best that we prepare for the worst case scenario. So we have been working. So we would encourage people, listen. We often encourage, listen to the weather forecast daily. The impact forecasting is geared at helping people to better understand what can happen, how the conditions that we may encounter would affect us. They might be able to tell you that according to the rains expected in St. George's, that Tantine is expected to flood. As a driver, I think we treasure that kind of information. So we know that I should not be passing in Tantine. I now need to plan my route differently to get to Grandlands. I can now pass the other way. And these are the things that we have been doing in an effort to be able to increase our information sharing, our preparation for the season. Along with that, we're also working with Met, where there's a page, Spice Weather. That young man works at the Met Office, and he shares the information, breaking it down for the ordinary man to understand. And these are the things that we encourage you to do. Go on and like these pages. Instead of we are trying to go out and create panic and talking about what Met is not doing, and before rain start to fall, where is NaDMA? Remember, NaDMA is not the Met service. What we do is we prepare you. So if there is a pending threat, you will hear us. Outside of that, we encourage you to listen to the weather report. Plan your day using the weather report, but we are preparing for the season. We must prepare for the season. In addition to that, Blossom, we also have a comprehensive disaster management audit that is currently ongoing. You heard speaking. And I think I have been speaking about it all morning as we spoke. Not directly, but comprehensive disaster management is what we practice. We cannot prepare just, and I keep saying, I think it was the first thing I said when I said that we cannot just prepare for the hurricane season. No, we don't just prepare for the hurricane season, but we prepare for every hazard. That is that is what we call comprehensive disaster management. We are preparing for every hazard that has the potential of affecting us. So we have been working. A lot has been happening inside. And in addition to that, in preparation of the season, we have also moved into our new home. So the Secretariat is no longer at Richmond Hill. We are now at Marshall, in that brand new building that everybody see and wondering, who is that? What building is that? It looks like a bomb shelter, but it is ideal for what we do, because when the winds start blowing, if it's a Category 5, we know that we are inside. There are no windows to be broken, and that the operations of management of this disaster can happen seamlessly without disruption, and people having to wonder what will happen if the windows break and that kind of thing. So the backup, everything is in order now, and we say thank you again to the U.S. government, U.S. Southern Command, for that very, very treasured gift. And not just in Grenada, but also Carriacou. Carriacou also have a new NEOC, which is the National Emergency Operating Center. So all of this, Blossom, it was designed specifically to be able to withstand a Category 5 hurricane. So all of this has been happening in preparation of this upcoming season. Because if we have to respond, if the Secretariat goes down, then what happens to everything else? The main arm goes down. So housing is very, very critical. And all of this we have done. We only recently moved in, still settling down, but by June 1st, we are ready to respond if we are to get adverse conditions, and not having to worry too much about the structure that we're in and how we will be able to make it happen.
On that note, Ms. Crosby, let's take a break, and then we're going to come back and continue the discussion. We'll also field some questions from our viewers and listeners who may have them. This is To The Point on Classic 105 and GBN. We'll be right back.
Join GBN on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. for Interesting Grenadians, a program that showcases the lives of interesting and outstanding Grenadians at home and abroad. It's Interesting Grenadians every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on GBN. Don't you miss it.
That's not how you cross the pedestrian crossing.
Really? One day I just woke up and I saw pedestrian crosswalks on the road. No one really showed me how to use them properly.
Well, this is how it's done. You never cross before doing these things. They might save your life. First, when you get to the crosswalk, you stop. You look left, you look right. If there's a vehicle coming, you put your hand out, making eye contact with the driver, indicating that you want to cross. And only when the vehicle comes to a complete stop, you quickly cross to the other side.
Stop, look, hand out, eye contact. Wait for pedestrian to cross to the other side, then you happily continue on your journey. This message is brought to you by this group of insurance companies, the Traffic Advisory Body, and the Traffic Department.
Welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with the Public Relations Officer of the National Disaster Management Agency, Oslyn Crosby. Ms. Crosby, part of what NaDMA does includes getting our children more informed and educated about disaster preparedness and disaster management. And I know this quiz, you have an annual quiz that NaDMA organizes. What are the plans for that quiz, and how has that helped our children better educate themselves about what disaster management is all about? And have you seen the fruits of the quiz, of holding the quiz?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. And one of the things that in disaster management that you always taught is that the first thing that you need to take care of those who cannot take care of themselves. They fall within your direct responsibility. So the vulnerable in our community. Among those will definitely be our children. And children, I always say, are excellent marketers whenever we're speaking safety to get parents to move. Every parent wants to ensure that their child or children are safe. And whenever children take messages home from school, Blossom, if you don't move any other time, you'll move then because the child said it. And you were thinking, no, but mommy, if you don't do that, then you know that I may get hurt, right? All right then and there, you would start moving, you would start thinking, but I never thought about it that way. So over the years, and that quiz started since after Ivan. So we see the importance. It was a UNESCO piloted project years ago when after Ivan, because as you rightfully said in introduction, when we started our conversation this morning, is that after Ivan, the thought, the response and behavior of people changed significantly when it comes to hurricanes and I think natural disasters and natural hazards in general. After Ivan, it was some 50-something years before we had our last, it was Janet, before we had our last serious hurricane here in Grenada. It was just our parents that knew about it, and some of us parents, the younger ones, did not even know of it. So it's like, what am I worrying about? So until it happens, then we wake up. And the quiz we usually target our primary schools. Where we go in, we usually do the preliminary round, the semi-final and the final, where we meet with our primary schools, a number of questions on the different hazards, the structure of NaDMA, the involvement of NaDMA in the process. So it forms part of that awareness campaign on sharing with our children the importance of this. Yes, we deal with hurricanes also, and it happens just before the season starts. For the past 2 years, we were unable to do it because, of course, restrictions that COVID gave us. We are hoping, what we did though, in the absence of the physical quiz, we were doing the radio version to it, where we had our questions sent to our partnering media houses, and the questions were asked to our young ones, encouraging our young ones to participate. But one of the things that we recognize is it did not just give our children an opportunity to call, but it enlightened also our adults. And it is our hope that we can bring back the quiz this year. Yes, we are still working with some limitations. I know we're hearing that some of our numbers are rising again. It is, we continue to be cautious. And I think it is what we have been encouraging, what our policymakers have been encouraging, that of vigilance, where we're not entirely out of the pandemic. But if we are unable to do the physical part of the quiz this year, it is our intention to be able to do that radio version again. Because taking a lot of things for granted does not mean that what we think is that it is. And you ask some questions sometimes on these, and it was like, okay, but I never looked at it that way. That is really what it is. So it is important that we continue these programs. In addition to that, we will also be doing putting a lot more information on our Facebook or social media platforms. Something that we will be starting on Monday called Did You Know? Did you know that some of the little things that you may not even think about, that it will help in that enlightening process? In addition to that, we will also be going into our communities, partnering with our stakeholders like our officers in the fire department. And remember, fire is not just, our firefighters are not just fire here in Grenada, but they also do rescue. If something were to happen, the same officers that have to save their lives also have to risk theirs to save others. So we will be partnering with some of these agencies to see with these organizations, because they form part of the NADMA body, to see how we can better inform and educate people. So we'll be going into the communities with them. We'll also be going into our districts. Let's see what our districts are doing. Our districts do a number of programs. I know recently we had one of our districts that was preparing to do a bridge. There was a crossing that was a bit dangerous for the children passing. So to do a bridge, do a project where the materials may be provided, but you use the community involvement to make it happen. And these are kind of the things that we are looking for, that we are looking forward to, and also some of the things that we will be implementing as we move closer into the season, and just year-round information sharing on the different hazards. So yes, Blossom, it has helped. The quiz has helped. The children's involvement in the exercises has also helped. And in addition to that, it is also the reason why we always target our schools when we do these exercises. When we started talking about the Tsunami Ready, we always go to our schools. Because remember, having a population of 300-400 children to deal with, Blossom, if something were to happen, that principal, the teacher of every class, has to account for every single child that came to school in the morning. When you did your register and you check their names as in, when we get to the muster point, the safe point, you have to be able to account for every one of them. And it is important that we do this. It is important that they know what they need to do, because like adults, children do panic. But one of the things that we recognize is information sharing, the constant exercising. It removes the element of panic, but what it does is prepares them. They know what they should do, and they will just react to the alert whenever it is shared. So we have seen the positives in our little ones. And in addition to that, they take that same message that we would share with them, be it in the quiz or in the exercises, and they take it home to parents. And then some of them, they ask for a drill. Mommy, where should we go if there's a tsunami? This is where we live now. Where should we go? They enlighten us. They wake us up. And I think they play a critical role in this process, in the safety cycle of everything. And as parents, we have to listen to them. It is also one of the reasons why we always go to them as excellent marketers of the disaster management process and message of safety, as we know parents will listen to them, because we all want to ensure that our children are safe.
At this point in the program, we're going to invite our viewers and listeners who may have comments, questions, queries, concerns for Ms. Crosby in relation to disaster management and emergency. Now is your chance to ask them. You can call us on the landline 435-2041. You can message us on the WhatsApp. It's also 435-2041. And you can post your comments on Facebook and your questions on Facebook and YouTube as well. There's a question that came in pretty early on the WhatsApp. Somebody says, I want to zero in on Aileron, where the people who live on that island, mostly from St. Patrick, and yet do not have a communication system, just in case of Kikem-Jenny eruption or hurricane approaching Grenada. Question, can you tell me if you will take a visit to that island and grant them my request about a CB radio system?
Okay, so that one would have to be, thank you so much for that question. That one would have to be one that we would have to do in conjunction with our fisher folks in St. Patrick. It should have formed part of the St. Patrick Tsunami Ready project. I think it did. When we did the consultations, it was one of the areas that came up as to how we would treat them. I know that there are no communication on that island, and also in the absence of a national alerting system. It is our preferred way. It is our ideal situation. It is not that way now. What we will have to do is establish communication with them to ensure that we can get the message to them. And that now is our biggest challenge, getting it to them. But it is a work in progress. It is a work in progress. We know that we do have islanders there, and they do come across to St. Patrick because it is the closest parish to them. That is what we can work on. I am not going to commit to it. It would have to be a discussion that we would need to have indoors. I will need to have it with the Deputy Disaster Coordinator and see how now we can facilitate, we can pull them into the process. And the interesting thing about that is St. Patrick is tsunami ready. Also, we did Caribou and Petit Martinique, and Aileron is nestled well within these two parishes. So this one is going to be one of our goals. It's going to be one of our goals, one of the things that we need to work on as it relates to establishing communication. So what we would do is, what I can promise to do is when it is done, that we do update you as to where we are at on that part of the on that concern. And thank you so much for raising it. Yes, it was one of the areas, though, that was raised when the consultation started in St. Patrick for that first tsunami-ready area and how we do get to them. I think one of the areas that were established, though, is that the St. Patrick fisher market, the fish market, where they do come in, because that's where they would dock on that on the jetty there, will be one of the areas to contact them. But how we do so is another story.
All right, let me go to the phone line. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. In the case of a tsunami, if you live in Lansapine, where should you head for?
Thank you, caller. Ms. Crosby.
Hi, thank you so much again for that question. And I'm happy that you asked it, because now we are in the process of mapping and identifying these safety zones for places like Lansapine. Lansapine is a big place. So I cannot tell you now that this is where it will be unless because we are in the process now walking that route so that we can identify the high points. What I will tell you now, as is now, you would be the best person to be able to identify the highest point. There are several high points in Lansapine. For example, I know that my children are usually down that side, and it is one of the highest points because I stay there and we look at the bottom of as far down as Calais, even the airport. So I know that is a high point, but there may be several other high points. So we need to identify them. And that forms part of that project Blossom that I spoke to a while ago on the tsunami ready, making the capital, making St. George's now tsunami ready. What it entails, that process involves that we have to walk the entire route. We have to consult with the people in the communities. Because while we may have an idea and seeing what may be the highest point, somebody living in the area maybe was no NaDMA. That point there, it's higher, and this is a shorter route to get to it. And that forms part actually of the consultation that must happen before we make a community tsunami ready. So I may not be able to answer this for you now and tell you that this is where you should go, because it is our work in progress. We are working actually on this right now, from Perseverance to take us all the way back to Woburn for that St. George's tsunami ready project, being able to identify these hazard areas, the hazardous areas, and also the high points, which are what we consider the muster points in St. George's. So that one will soon be coming to you. But what I would encourage you to do now, even though we may not have it formally in place, that as a resident in the area, look at the area and tell us where. Look at it and you identify what would be the highest point until we get, because we cannot tell you wait until we get there. If something were to happen, no, you need to respond, and you will need to respond now. So what I would encourage is that you look around your community. Where do you think is the highest point? Identify it, and also identify what is the safest and shortest route away from the hazard to get to that highest point.
Let me go back to the landline. Good morning, caller.
Blossom, Alexis. Blossom.
Good morning.
How are you, my dear?
I'm good.
Glad to have you back, man.
Good to be back. And
I'm telling Ms. Crosby, this is a very good program. Keep on the good program. Educating the nation. Going to carry competitive mathematics. I'm calling from St. David's side. I would ask in case of a tsunami where we can go to the highest peak. To be exact, I'm calling from Hampstead in St. David's. That is up the hill by Tibide Pool. So I would like to know. Have an idea, Ms. Crosby. Thank you very much. Have a good day to all of you all.
Thank you very much, caller. Ms. Crosby.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Again, St. David's. One of the good things with St. David's is, Blossom, that most of St. David's are inland. That's a plus for St. David. Not all of St. David's, though. Not all of St. David. The Lassages area, which is where we have beach, is a concern. And also as you move closer to St. Andrew and some of these waterways. What I will tell you is, and that's it, that's the thing with these areas. We cannot say for sure until we decide to go in and do the hard work of walking the route and so on. So I would not be able to tell you now because I'm not even sure where he's speaking about Blossom. But what I will tell you though, as I explained to the caller a while ago in Lansopine, is that know where you are. You can tell whether or not where you live that water may affect you, right? But as I always say, where you live may not be your concern. Where you live may not be the concern. Because Blossom, for example, you're up in Observatory Road now. That's well away from the sea. You would actually be able to stay up there and look at what's happening with the water and what it's doing on the Carenage and down in the town of St. George. That's because you're at a high point. But that is where you work. Where you live, on the other hand, Blossom, may be closer to the water. So then you need to now sit down and say, okay, this is where I'm at. Am I further? Am I really far away from the sea? Am I within the hazard zone? And it is what the mapping, that big map that we show, that inundation map, gives us an idea of. Because water usually can move as much as 100 meters in, yeah? And that's dependent on the wave size. And also that's dependent on the earthquake, how big the tremor is, yeah? There are many factors that affects how high the waves can get, which would also determine how much they come inside. What we always ask you to do is do an assessment of your area, a personal assessment. If I am from Victoria, where I grew up, Blossom, without a doubt, I know that if there is a tsunami coming, that I will be affected because I'm not far away from the sea. If you live in Coast Guard though, and you're from Victoria, then you know I'm not in danger. I would not be in any immediate danger because I'm on top of the hill. You would stay on top there and see what's happening down in the town. The same thing would apply for the person in Lansopine. The person in Guelph, similar thing would happen. If you're right in the town, then you'll know the bay right behind, the seas right behind the police station and the health center. You know that you need to move. Yeah? You need to go. Our high points, what are your high points in Guelph? Dr. Bell. You have, as I said, behind St. Rose Modern Secondary School. Up Central, these are your high points. So you move to these areas. If you live in St. David's, you may be living in Lassages, in one of the low-lying areas. And you look at it and you say, okay, the sea is right there. If there is a tsunami, I will be affected. What is the highest point? You look around. What is the highest point in my area? And what is the shortest route to get there? These are the questions that we wanted to ask. St. Andrew is another one. We did the tsunami, the Carib wave exercise in St. Andrew before. The entire town of Grenville is well in there, right there. Pearls, another area of concern. Look at the sea right behind the police, that office that they have up there in Pearls. So we know that we have to move to those high ground. Right there in Pearls, I think there's a hill right on the left-hand side of the same base, that SSU base there. So you identify those high points, what is closest to you, so that when they do happen, you can move. While, yes, we're going to get to the stage where we can tell you, for the people who live in the Lansopine, this is your high point. That is your high point. You now would need to choose which is the closest one to you. Because remember, we would give you an idea. On the day, though, it may not happen like that. And I don't want you to think only where you live, but also where you may be. So no matter where you are, you have that level of awareness. That level of awareness is critical because you may not be home where you are safe. You might just be in town. You might be in Grove. You might be in Victoria. Always have that awareness, knowing that I am here, and if this were to happen, that this is where I should go. But we are working towards getting to the place where we can share with you and tell you, you're in Victoria, run to Coast Guard. You're in Bonaire, run up the hill in Bonaire, up on top, up in Banjou. We are getting to that place. We are not there yet. But what we ask of you to do now, in preparation, just in case the hazard do affect us and we are not where we would want to be as it relates to having that data, that you are also ready.
There's a question on WhatsApp. Somebody says, what does disaster management have in store in case there is an emergency example of fire in Happy Hill or Brazan? Where is the fire truck or ambulance going to pass to get there? And they also ask, what about Carland Park? And what are you doing to address the critical choke points that will prevent emergency access to vulnerable areas? I guess that's the overall question.
That one, I welcome that question. Reason being, last year, when we did the Carib wave exercise up on the west, it was the western coast we did last year, We did Victoria Gulf, and we included that Grand Mall area because of that issue with the land slippage and that detour. And it is an important question, and we do welcome it. And it was in consideration of that also. As is now, Blossom, we're driving up that side and we see the bottleneck that is created with the traffic. If we do have an emergency, it is an important question. We welcome it. What I will say is it is an ongoing discussion. It is an ongoing discussion with our fire department, and it was also considered the traffic department, fire, and NaDMA that conversation was held. We continue to hold it. It is the reason why it means, therefore, that we may have to use alternative routes to get there. One of the other routes I know, because trucks are not encouraged to pass in the Morris area, they should be passing through that Willis, the other road to come to Granville Vale. It may be one of the things, but in times of emergency, always remember, the emergency precedes everything that's happening on a normal basis. So it means that if it means that you have to block the traffic to get to the area to be able to provide the service, I'm sure that our first responders will do exactly what they need to. And I know that there is a plan as to this, so how you respond to these with all the challenges that we may have. It may, as I always say, we may not have the ideal situation, but at the end of the day, our first responders, the initial thing is always to save lives, see how we can save lives, and it forms part of the disaster management process. And I think it is also the reason why we hear government constantly speaking of the works that need to happen to ensure that we repair or do what we need to do to ensure that that mall in their area is corrected, because it creates quite a challenge for us right now. Plus, I'm sure every single day there's an accident on that side. And whenever there's an accident, you stop there for quite a while because the police have to come. We know what happens. And it is not, because that should have been what you consider to be your backup road, which is now our main road. And there's a lot. We see that there are additional work trying to do some additional work in widening and so, but ideal situation, we don't have it. We are working now on backups and of course seeing how we can repair what may exist that may not be the ideal situation and how we can respond adequately to make sure that we can save lives and property whenever those hazards do pop up. But I must say that I am happy that the question is asked. It means, therefore, that we are thinking safety and also how we can respond as quickly as possible, at least our first responders, to these needs when they do pop up.
Any final thoughts as we wrap up the program? And in wrapping up, somebody's asking, can you tell me how big Aileron is and what is the population of the island?
That information we don't have. That information I cannot share with you now. And that's why I said that one is it's going to be one of our goals where we would have to go on island because all those things we will need to know how much people are living there, and we would need to engage them, go on the island. All that information we will need to ensure that first concern that was shared by one of our callers, the questions as to how we plan to reach them, if that were to happen, and establishing some sort of communication with them, it will form part of that goal that we will need to have a bigger discussion on at NaDMA. And we will be updating the public on it once we do get to achieve this one, because we know it has an important part. It is an island that forms part of our state, and we have to ensure that the people who live there, that we do ensure that they are safe and that we can get information to them if and or when the hazard will be impacting us.
Closing comments.
Blossom, I just want to encourage the general public. I know that this morning I did focus a lot on tsunamis. I recognize that people, they call for tsunami, you heard. It is one of the hazards that have us, as I said, when we have not experienced something, then it is new and we may not be concerned too much about it because we don't know how to behave, but it is important that we are prepared. And I don't want us to just be prepared or concerned about just tsunamis. And then we tend to think that we can just lean back a little bit for the hurricanes. They are all hazards and can affect us at any time. Let us not forget our accidents. We have heard the traffic department speak constantly. The Easter weekend, we recognize it was not so bad from what we have heard from the police. I did not hear of any serious ones, so that made it was great. Because Blossom, we know that that's a time when we hear a lot of accidents. We see a lot of markings in the road. It was not that bad. It means that we are becoming a little bit more safety conscious. And I must commend the public for this. That one was definitely one that we appreciate at the agency. And I'm sure the police would say the same, because the police form part of the NaDMA structure. Accidents, fires, flooding, all of that forms part of it. The tsunamis, the earthquakes, volcanoes, yes, we know of those, the hurricanes, but let us not forget also our biological ones, yeah? We have the pandemic, it is still raging. So they are all around us. But as we always remind you, safety is an individual's responsibility. Do what you need to do to ensure that you are safe. I don't think that we're going to be walking the street and we're going to see a pothole and decide to jump in it. And when you break your foot or you sprain your ankle and you say that it was not my fault, it was yours because you jumped. We could have passed around it, but we chose to do it. Treat your life the same way. You know that you have the little ones at home, and you know that you have to put away the matches. You know that you need to have them supervised by a responsible adult, not just anybody, a responsible adult. Flooding. If you hear that there's going to be a lot of rain, the possibility of flooding, and you know you're living in a low-lying area, you know that as the wet season is approaching, that you need to open up the drains. You need to clean the gutters to ensure that you are not displaced. You are not made uncomfortable because you did not act. So let's do what we need to do to ensure that we are always safe and be prepared for all the hazards. Talk about them with your children. Talk about them with your family. Have that plan. It is important. And remember, a plan is not a complex thing. It is a conversation and the assignment of duties to everyone so that when it does happen, we know where we should be meeting, we know who to call, we know where to go, and we know exactly what we should be doing when they do affect us. And remind us again, safety is an individual's responsibility. Blossom, always a pleasure. To all the callers, thank you so much for the questions. The viewers, always a pleasure speaking with you. And Blossom, every second Monday, we will have our time. What I will do, though, you will not always see me. I will be bringing in some of our stakeholders to share with you. And one of them that I want to bring in for sure this time is to have Carol speaking with you, because I think it's important that we get the Sister Isle in the mix, sharing on all that's happening, because we do have a very vibrant district team over there on the Sister Isle, working very, very hard, always engaging the public so that everybody knows what's happening.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much, Ms. Crosby. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good weekend and stay safe.
You're most welcome, and the same I wish you.
All right. Public Relations Officer of the National Disaster Management Agency, Oslyn Crosby. We thank her for being our guest. And thank you, viewers and listeners, for tuning in to The Point. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your listenership and your viewership. This is the end of my time with you for today. Enjoy the rest of your fantalicious Friday. Have yourselves a safe and enjoyable weekend and continue to do what you need to do to stay safe. Have a good one.